Monday, March 31st, 2025, on an Avalon Rhine River Cruise, we arrive in Lugano. Our Lugano local tour guide leads the entire group through town to our next meeting point. This third Lugano video picks up after lunch inside a 15th century church established by Franciscan monks. This Google Earth Flyover shows the spatial relationship between the train station's midtown location and the church on the lakefront. Our guide provides a very detailed historical perspective of the very Spartan church and the relationship to the Franciscan monks. Unlike other churches adorned with precious relics and artwork, the only elaborate detail of this church is the fresco depicting the life of Christ.
Ma lui è con me, è lo stesso, ma io li faccio sedere. Okay, you can sit here. This church was built at the beginning of the 16th century, so we are talking about a group of Franciscan monks who arrived here in Lugano in around 1490. They were given a huge piece of land, and first of all they built their monastery, and we are going to see what is left of the monastery right after the visit to the church, and after that they started building the church. The monks arrived here. We're talking about a group of Franciscan monks. This church is a typical Franciscan church. First of all, we are talking about the beginning of the 16th century, full Renaissance period. But this church doesn't look at all as a Renaissance church. We will see it when we go out. I will ask you to look at the facade. The facade is a very typical Romanesque facade, and even the side inside of the inside the church, when we look around, with the exception of this magnificent fresco that you can see in front of you, this is a very simple and basic church, because this is part of what being a Franciscan monk means. Franciscans still today, this order still exists today. One of the most important things of being a Franciscan is that they make a vow of poverty. So they cannot show off, they could never spend money in decorations, because decorations were considered something not essential. So why did they build this fund? Did they have enough money for these gigantic fresco? First of all, let's look at the characteristics of this church. This church has a horizontal wall that literally divides the church into two parts. This is not typical of Catholic churches. You do not find it almost anywhere. You do find it today in very few of the remaining Franciscan churches, because the monks used to live behind this wall. Behind this wall used to be their monastery, and they could not mix with normal people, but this was also their churches. So they had a side door, which we're going to see in a while, using which they could directly go into the inner part of the church. That part of the church on the other side of the transversal wall was dedicated to the monks. This part, where we are now, was dedicated to normal people which would enter the church using the door that we have used today. This fresco is on this side of the church. The other side of the wall is completely blank. There is nothing. So this fresco was for us. It was meant for us. It was not meant for the monks. And here comes the second big thing about the Franciscans. The Franciscans still today, but especially in the past, were famous for their use of words. They were fantastic preachers. And in centuries during which people were illiterate, people until the second half, normal people, until the vast majority of people, until the second half of the 19th century, couldn't read or write. So this church was built by the Franciscans not to become one of the churches that were in the area, because we already had dozens of churches. What people needed here was to learn about the Gospels, was to learn about the life of Jesus Christ. So people came here to listen to the words of the preacher. You have to imagine that there was a pulpit there, a wooden stand. The preacher would stand on top of that pulpit and would preach. But when you say things, you might forget about them, like what I'm doing today. You might think it's interesting, but tonight, when you go to bed, do this experiment and think, what do I remember of what Raffaella told me today? Maybe 50% I would be really, really happy. But usually it's like 20%, very often is 0%, because this is how our brain works. We tend to forget. But if you can create a connection between words and an image, that will change everything. So this is the reason why this fresco was made. If you look at it, you might think it's just a crucifixion, but it's not. This is the narration of the last days in the life of Jesus Christ. It starts from the upper left corner. You have to be able to see the different images. Every image is a different day in the last few days in the life of Jesus Christ. So top left corner, Thursday night, the night that Jesus spends praying on the Mount of Olives. Then you go down under that temple, and this is the Friday when Jesus is captured and condemned to death. That you have to follow that horizontal line, and you have the moment when Jesus carries the cross to the point where he will be crucified, and after that you have the moment of the death of Jesus, the last embrace of his mother. After that, you have the moment when, after the resurrection, he appears to the 11 apostles who are still there waiting, and the last moment, the top right corner, is the moment of his ascension to heavens, 40 days after his resurrection. And on the foreground, you have a multitude of people. You have more than 100 characters, and basically you have all the characters in the gospel. So what the preachers had to do was to simply use his finger while he was talking to point at different characters, different moments, to help people understand and retain what he was doing. So for centuries, this was the place where locals coming from all over the region came, and they came in hundreds to learn about the Gospels. So people here for centuries learned about Jesus Christ and his life in this very church. And this is one of maybe the most important masterpiece of one of the most important painters of the Renaissance of the northern part of Italy. His name was Bernardino Luini. He died in 1532, and this was the last thing that he did. He finished it in 1529, and he was one of the most important pupils, students of Leonardo da Vinci, because Leonardo da Vinci lived for almost 20 years in Milan, and at that time we were still part of the reign of Milan. So artists and intellectuals were coming back and forth, and this is the reason why Bernardino Luini came here. So he was a very famous artist, so they paid him, the monks paid him a big sum of money, because this for them was part of what they were, of their preachings. Okay, so now if you want to take pictures, you can do that, and I'll wait for you outside.